Hey everybody, it's Tim and Steve at Phantom History House. How are you doing, Steve?
I am well, and how are you?
I'm doing great. We're so excited. We're going to be talking about ghosty cemetery stuff tonight, which I think is going to be really fun.
Yes, we have Wendy with Tombstone Travels who's going to talk to
It's
us.
going to be really cool. Thank you guys for being here. Welcome to Phantom History House Calls. All right, so it is an exciting time at Phantom History House.
It is. We are coming up on our final weekend at Phantom History House before we close the doors. But remember, that doesn't mean the house may be closing, but we're still going to be around. We got a lot of cool things happening and moving forward. And we're going out with a bang. We're having back-to-back Ghost Story by the Fire events this Saturday and Sunday night.
It's going to be really fun. So if you're in the area, Sunday night is sold out, totally packed in. We appreciate everybody that bought a ticket for that very last night of our event here. But we do have the same thing happening on Saturday night. I'm going to be having baked goods. There's going to be some wine. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, ghost stories from you.
Yes, ghost stories from me. And the weather's going to be perfect. And we'll have s'mores, all the good stuff as we celebrate our last weekend as Phantom History.
Absolutely. And we had some wonderful returning guests check in today. And so we have the last 5 nights have started tonight with guests in the house. We're very excited about that as sort of a way to wrap up this whole adventure.
Yes. And I think that's one of the best things and most rewarding things about this whole experience over the past 2+ years is the people that have come back to see us. We made friends with, stay in touch with, even when they're not, sleeping upstairs. And it's really great having them back.
And I do want to remind you that a lot of the wonderful antique furniture and treasures that we've collected that have been all over the house are available. And a lot of people have claimed really cool pieces, but there are a lot of great pieces that are still available. If you go to phantomhistory.com, right there on the first page, there's a thing that says furniture for sale. Go here and it'll have links where you can see all of the stuff that's available. We're adding new stuff all the time. So if you are interested in supporting us and having a piece of Phantom History House to take back home with you, we hope you'll look at all that.
Yeah, we would love that. And of course, on our website, you're going to see some changes as we focus more on the podcast and the upcoming travel. So stay tuned and also sign up for our newsletter so you can keep up with where we are. And if you are watching tonight, let us know where you're watching from. And again, feel free to ask any questions of us or our guest. And also, if you have any stories you want to share based on tonight's topic, which is cemetery photography. But not only is our guest, Wendy, a photographer, she is also an author, and she wrote Haunted Joliet Prison,
cool.
Which is part of Haunted America.
Which you have been reading.
Which I have been reading. I'm about halfway through it with Kristen Giesling's bookmark.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, peace and happy.
And to the point of this, everybody, don't forget that we are going to continue the Phantom History brand. It's still going to be happening. We're going to be going to these places, visiting cemeteries, haunted locations, all around everywhere.
Yes.
So stay tuned. Sign up for our newsletter so you know where we're going to be next.
Yes.
Should we bring Wendy on?
And hello to Chris and Kristen who are watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
From within the house.
The call is coming from within the house tonight. Okay,
it is.
Cool.
But yes, let's bring on Wendy Moxley Rowe.
All right, there she is. Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight and talking to us about Tombstone Travels and your experiences. Just briefly introduce yourself to everybody watching. Who are you? What do you do? And where are you from?
So my name is Wendy, and I live in Virginia right now. For 12 years, I lived in Chicago, and I started out with a haunted cemetery, and it just kind of led to the cemetery photography, and that's mostly what I do. I blog. I photograph cemeteries. I love ghost stories. In 2014, I think it was, I actually went into a prison. It's a pretty funny story, and that led to me writing the book. So
wow,
that's
really?
Yeah. Did you read the intro to I wrote the story because it was just such a funny thing that happened. We actually have photos.
Okay, so we have to hear about that more.
Yeah.
You're talking about it was fun.
This amazing book.
Yes, when I first saw the prison, and it was the same thing. I was just we had gone to meet some people for an investigation in what is called Joliet Iron Works, and it used to be an old iron place. It's like a park now state park or something. And but it blew. They had some explosions. A lot of people, died there. So we all met up there, and of course I wandered from the group because I always do, and I just kind of came through these trees, and this huge hulking building was there, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? I had no idea, and it ended up being this prison that's been there since
And
the
just to kind of, this
1850s.
is the most professional way to show this, but that's, that
Yeah.
building is huge. And
It's massive,
I
and it's
love how you
so
describe discovering it as kind of like you followed your camera, like this is a great photo,
yes.
this is what you wanted to see, and suddenly you walk into this massive building.
Yeah, it was. And then of course we went back and we got the other people, and we went through these fence holes, and we ended up inside. And this was before they did the tours. They do tours. They're restoring it now. They have for several years. They run tours through it, and I'm so glad that they did something, because when we went in there, it just had been sitting there since 2002, and it was just slowly rotting away. But it's a massive, and when you see it for the first time, it's just, it was pretty
And
significant.
to give people kind of a point of context of what Joliet Prison is, it is featured in the Blues Brothers movie.
Yes.
Right. So it's not too far from Chicago. So just kind of give you an idea, this is one of those iconic big prisons that has this creepy style.
Yeah, when he comes out, that in the very beginning, and he comes out of it, that's Joliet Prison. And
I'm struck by this part of your story where you were on this investigation and then you just sort of wander off by yourself. Like, that seems
normal.
That is me. So my story began with, it's Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. It is, if you look it up, it's said to be one of the most haunted locations in the world. I believe it was in the 90s. There was a photo taken on a headstone of a ghost woman sitting on it. It's one of the most famous. It's called the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, and it became one of the most famous paranormal pictures ever. If you Google it, stuff will come up all about it. And I went in there one day. It was about 45 minutes away from where I was living in Chicago. And my daughter actually was the one that wanted to go because of all the ghost stories and stuff she had seen. And coming out of there, it was me that ended up, I met someone there that day that we did a lot of research on the cemetery. It's very historic, besides being, supposedly haunted. So that's what began the whole thing, was this Bachelor's Grove Cemetery.
So you went there with camera in hand, hoping to catch a ghost, to just catch the cemetery as a whole. Like, what was it? This goes to Kristen's question.
No, I've always loved to take pictures. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always taking family pictures. As I got older, I'm a big music buff too. I've been to hundreds of live concerts, and I took photos of that. I have lots of live concert photos. So I just like taking pictures. I went down this path, and there were, trees, and there was a train track and old abandoned buildings. And I was just looking for stuff to take pictures of. We spoke earlier. I'm not much of an investigate kind of ghost story paranormal person. I like the ghost stories, and then I kind of like to research the history, what actually happened. And, some of us like to just piece the story together and see where the story came from, and, what kind of like facts and led to the legends that we hear, in these famous places.
Well, that's certainly your thing. I mean, you love to know the history of a place or a building, and then, of course, find out about the paranormal stuff too.
Yeah, I always joke, if something's going to haunt me, I want to know what it was when it was alive, so I know what I'm dealing with. And Brown Brothers Haunting Hour is watching on Instagram, and they say Bachelor's Grove is legit, so they agree with you there on that.
So you can go to, if I can plug my website real quick, www.thepathtobachelorsgrove.com. And that's where where everything is. All of our, I had a partner for a while, and we built this website dedicated to it, and it's pretty phenomenal what we've had. It's all the history and all the paranormal side, because Bachelor's Grove is it's
So
pretty.
one thing I'm curious about, Wendy, and this is something I kind of discovered along the way as I would, you know, check out these different cemeteries wherever I was, that there's so much symbolism to tombstones and grave sites. Did you know much about that when you started all of this, or have you, like me, did you kind of learn along the way?
I didn't know anything. Like I said, I walked into we call it the Grove, Bachelor's Grove, because of ghost stories and it being haunted. But it led to us going to someone taking me to other cemeteries, and I just really got into, that's mostly my thing, is the art in cemeteries. I like to see the Victorian cemeteries with the statuary, and the big Chicago is amazing for grandiose memorials and headstones. Their cemeteries there, they're just phenomenal. So that's what I got in. We just started doing that, and I started, really loving. It's like you said, it's peaceful there. And in the beginning, I was kind of an introverted, quiet person, and I would go by myself and just photograph, and then I come home and kind of research what I photographed and that kind of thing. So.
I love that. It makes me want to go to Chicago and see these.
Oh yeah, you got to go to Graceland. Graceland is the best. It's just.
Well, I think so many of us go to a cemetery, and the goal is to find the oldest tombstone that you can find. You talked about.
Yeah.
I know you and your mom used to do that.
We would often do that, like to try to see how early the graveyard.
Yeah, which leads to a question Kristen has put in the chat. For you, Wendy, what's the oldest tombstone you've come across? Do you remember?
I think it was early 1700s. There is my parents live, like I said, I'm from Harford County, Maryland, and then it's right on the Pennsylvania border. And my parents live just above in Pennsylvania, and there's a small town there. And they have a cemetery, and there are some Revolutionary War soldiers buried in there. And so I'd say maybe mid 1700s. Okay. And that's a pretty fascinating story, real quick, because they made this slate in this little town of Delta, Pennsylvania, and they say it's like literally indestructible. These headstones are from like 1750 to 1775, and they look like they were made yesterday. There's no damage to them. There's no decay. There's no fading of the writing, or I mean, not the writing, the engraving. And it's phenomenal. They're like 200-year-old church there with this roof. It's really wild. Yeah.
So is it a certain kind of slate? Are you saying it's a certain kind of stone?
They mined it in this little town.
Wow.
It was Welsh people that came, and they made this little town, and they mined this specific, it's called blue slate, and it's in this certain tract that goes up into Pennsylvania. And it was huge at the time. They took it to the World's Fair, and it won all kinds of awards, and it literally is just like indestructible. Of course, later in years, it wasn't economical to use it anymore like that. So of course, it went out of fashion. But for a lot of years, it was, it was prevalent, especially in the area. The little town, it has the slate sidewalks still.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, I know that, again, when the two of us travel, we stop at cemeteries all the time. We did New Orleans, we did the St. Louis cemetery, these iconic kind of places. But I love that you're finding these, I don't want to say off the beaten path, because that doesn't sound right, but these less known, less popular cemeteries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anywhere I go, we go on vacation. Yeah. Where's the cemetery?
Do the same thing. And have you come across any designs in tombstones that have like surprised you, that, something you haven't seen before? We've all seen crosses. We've all seen angels.
Yeah.
What are some of the unique ones that stand out for you?
So the biggest one, and I just learned something about this statue. So I lived in Chicago, and one of my best girlfriends lived down near Indiana border, and she took me to a couple of cemeteries in Indiana. And we pulled into, it was in Chesterton, Indiana, and we pulled into the cemetery, and I looked to the right, and it's literally this golem looking crouched down figure with it looks like almost a little roof, four-sided roof on his head, and he's holding a microphone and radio. And I was like, I had to do a double take, and it's like the weirdest one I've ever seen. The guy that is buried in there was a ham radio operator, from what I've heard. I really don't know much about that, but that's what it was. I don't know, and nobody knows what the story is behind it, why he chose that, but it's kind of it's bizarre for sure.
Maybe that's what he looked like. Self-portrait.
What she's going to say.
Maybe he wore little square hats.
It was a horrible karaoke singer. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, so that was the weirdest one. But like I said, so far, I went to the only one that I've been to that kind of rivals Chicago cemeteries is Cave Hill in Louisville, Kentucky. That one's amazing too, and they have a lot of. I couldn't even pick one out of all of them. It's just I spent 7 hours in there, and I still didn't see it all. It was but it was incredible.
Yeah. So have you taken lessons to learn photography? Or are you just sort of self-taught? And if so, how do you decide and figure out how to compose the shot and get the right? I'm interested in the photography part.
So honestly, I don't know a lot about photography. It's a natural thing. It always has been. I have the camera that I use is a Canon Rebel T3, and I've had it for a long time. And it's just a natural thing. I go and I usually take more than one photo of, the same thing, different angles. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I just kind of choose the best ones. And it's kind of more a natural thing. I also like to use, and some people don't get down with this, but I'm more talented in using a photo editor program to make a photo and alter it the way that I want it to look. And I don't do major alterations. I just kind of do, a color, enhance or this. Sometimes not. Just depends on. And I play around with my camera. It has a lot of different settings, but I'm so not like a technical person. I just kind of go with it.
Well, I love that you're describing this as something that's just been a part of you from when you were very small, and it's just you love to take photographs. Yes. So it makes sense to me that you would sort of figure out how to do the angles and how do you want to compose the shot. It's very interesting to me that you had that.
Yeah, I started. I mean, I know a little bit. Obviously, you have to know some. When I bought my bigger camera, I bought one of those dummy books with it. They have one of those 4 dummy books specifically for my camera. And so that's how I learned to use it. And so I know more. I'm afraid to get a new camera. I feel like I might have to start all over again.
Well, yeah, tech changes so quickly.
I get it.
Yeah. And I know you said you're in Virginia, and our dear friend and relative Kelly is watching, and she wants to know, have you taken any pictures in the Hollywood Cemetery, Richmond?
Yes, that was on my bucket list for years.
Why is that?
Just got to go to it. It's very historic. I love the big Victorian cemeteries, the ones that are, they made them to be park-like settings back then. It was specifically to be for people to come, and they used to picnic and, do all those kind of things. That's what they started making cemeteries into in those days. And so they were very grand. And this one happens to be in Virginia, in Richmond. So there's a lot of Civil War burials, famous Civil War burials. Now, the biggest attraction in there is the president's tomb. It's called the Birdcage. And I can't remember. I just wrote a blog about it. It's this beautiful beautiful Gothic memorial, and it just is. It's gorgeous, and it's like on the historic landmarks thing, but it's just Hollywood's a well-known cemetery. It's one of those ones, if you're a cemetery person, you want to go there.
Okay, so Kelly, when we come to visit you need to let us know if you're willing to go with us to this famous Hollywood cemetery. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Kelly will totally be on board to go there.
I think so. I can imagine it.
And it's beautiful. It sets on the James River, and it's way up, on a cliff, and you can watch the water. They have benches and stuff in there. It was beautiful.
Wonderful.
So,
we'll have to go.
I love that, people put so much thought into their final resting place, or the final resting place of their, husband, wife, spouse, loved one, whoever it might be. But I also know that there are times where, we're driving across country and we see this little roadside cemetery, and there's always surprises there too. We did this on the trip to see your family.
The one where you met all the cows?
Yes.
We did stop going through rural Georgia one time, and this beautiful cemetery right next to a church.
Yeah.
I guess it would have been a graveyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Graveyard next to a church. And there was a field with a bunch of cows. And as we were, well, especially you, somehow, when you were wandering around, all the cows were drawn to Steve, and they all came right up. And I don't know if they thought you looked like you were going to feed them, or
maybe I look like a farmer.
They're just curious. I grew up around that stuff, so they're just curious. Yeah. Cows are very friendly. They are. Some people are scared of them because they're big, but I grew up literally in cow country.
Well, they were friendly to us that day, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I remember that visit to that graveyard, particularly because of the cows. But anyway, it's fun to stop.
Funny because they're these big hulking animals, but they're very gentle. And I used to live in Pennsylvania, and I was in a little farmhouse on a big, huge dairy farm. And I would wake up in the morning and look out my kitchen window, and a cow would be right there. Now, these big, huge 1,500-pound animals were scared to death of my Pomeranian. So.
That's fantastic. I don't know if I want to wake up with a cow staring at me like that, but
it was just common. We were just like, oh, hi,
Well, Kristen, who's watching tonight, says that she thinks it was your farmer's beard that attracted the cows.
Oh, yeah. I think so. It doesn't tell me the food source. So, Wendy, I'm curious, with all of your cemetery photography, and I know you said that you're not a paranormal investigator, you're more into the art and photography. Have you ever caught anything unexplained in one of your shots on accident? Has you ever come across anything weird?
So it's weird because I have a very serious interest in the paranormal. Mm-hmm. I just don't really do the investigations. I love going to haunted places, especially haunted houses. My favorite. There was a photo. There is a place called Ray Myers Hollow, and it's something that I grew up with. It's in Pennsylvania. And basically what happened in 1929, it's a long story, but there was a guy, and of course, in that area of Pennsylvania, it's South Central Pennsylvania, there were a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch people that came. They were Dutch, and they came to this area of Pennsylvania. So it's still this I don't know if you want to call it a culture, or these people, this stayed in our area, and it's very prevalent still. But it was a guy, and they practiced what they called, it was a type of witchcraft. And right now it's escaping me what it was called, but it's specific. And a guy got it into his head that he was cursed. He tried to kill the guy. They tried to set the body on fire, but it didn't burn, and they got caught doing it. But the area, the house still stands, is supposed to be really, really haunted. My sister's best friend, his name was John. He's passed now, or I would have interviewed him about this. When we were young, he went out there late one night in his car with a couple people. And this was a serious guy. I would have never had expected this from him, but after he visited there, he swore that something was following him, a demon or something, for about a month. And he came to the house one time and he talked about it. And I can kind of read people pretty well. And he was scared to death.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty serious area. And I caught one day, to answer the question, I'm sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but I was photographing the house one day and it looks like a face in the window. But other than that, I mean, I've caught stuff on video. I posted recently, we were in the Grove, and my partner at the time, Carl, we were making a video and he was talking about something paranormal and pertaining to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. And it's just, when we looked at it later, there is a white sphere that just kind of comes in, and it goes kind of around and out real slow and back and over. And I mean, I thought it was weird because there wasn't anything there when we filmed it. And so that was kind of one of the biggest things we have. But other than that, I've experienced a lot of other things, but like seeing ghosts or capturing, not really. Yeah, just those few things.
Well, now you just you just said you've experienced some other things. Do you want to share any other stories about any other paranormal encounters?
Yeah, what I experienced with that cemetery with Bachelor's Grove for me was more of a spiritual thing. There's a lot of things that changed in my life when I went in there. I don't talk about this often, but the night before I went there, I had been in Chicago for a couple of years, and I was doing well finally financially. My husband passed in 2006. So I had 2 daughters, and I moved to Chicago trying for a better life. And I didn't know anybody. I had no friends. I was so frustrated. I broke down in tears that Saturday night, and I just kind of said to God, or whoever's up there, I need a break. I need something. Something needs to change. And the next day I walked into that cemetery and I met my partner then, Carl, there, and it opened, I did research now, genealogy research. I've written a book, because of this, and this whole world just kind of opened to me. And then some of the things that were happening, because when I was doing the research and uncovering stuff that people didn't even know, burials of people, the cemetery has a horrible vandalism and destruction background. And it was a farmer's background. They don't even have like legal documents of the people being buried there. It was a farmer with a hand-drawn map, and he wrote names and lots. Wow. And but we uncovered a lot of people that were buried there that weren't known before. And the information, even though other professional people have delved into this, we were able to find some of this stuff. And it just kind of would come to me. I would, spend some time reading old newspapers and, old documents on ancestry. And I was building these family trees, and it just naturally, I would find something and it would lead to something else huge. Like we found 1950s photos of headstones that have been missing from the cemetery for years. Yeah. So kind of thing, spiritual stuff.
You've done some restoration work too in some cemeteries.
Yeah.
Before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Carl and I took the state preservation classes in Illinois, and we went with my very good cemetery friend, Angie. She was also, they have American Gravestone Studies, AGS. She was the president of Illinois for a while and a great restorationist. She did all kinds. And we went down to Southern Illinois to, they call it the old slave house. It's haunted as well. But we restored the cemetery that was near there. But it's, excuse me, it's famously haunted. The story there was that back in the day, Illinois was a free state, but they allowed this man to have slaves. because he ran the salt mines down there, and he apparently mistreated them badly. And the area is known, the house is supposedly really haunted. There was a guy, there's a whole article if you can find it, and I know the guy wouldn't stay the night. He went there, he lasted a couple hours, and he left. But we restored. It's very historic too, because the guy was, the salt mines and everything. It provided the salt for all over the place, and so historic too. And we did the restoration there. We restored the cemetery, set them back up.
And I love that you're able to discover so much lost history, like you were talking about before. That's one of the things I love about what we do, is learning about these graves that have either been rediscovered or were misplaced, or some of them have been paved over. I mean, that happens all the time here in Tampa, where we are right now. They're constantly uncovering. Yeah. So it's a lot of history that's lost. If everybody, just so you know, if you want to see some of these amazing photographs that Wendy has captured, you can find her on Instagram at Tombstone Travels. Same with Facebook. And Wendy, where else can people see your work and follow your blog?
Well, my blog is on the Wix site, and it's under Tombstone Travels. You just have to go to wix.com and search me, I think, because it's it doesn't have it's not like Facebook, where it's like facebook.com and then your name. It has this whole URL. But I'm on YouTube as well. Same thing, Tombstone Travels. And I have a couple of pages that are dedicated to the book, but like I said, my main focus now is the cemetery stuff. So
it's really interesting. I want to tell you, Wendy, I really appreciate you sharing this story of this sort of spiritual moment that you had, and how the Grove turned out to have such significance for you. I really do believe the universe sort of leads us to things that are important and meaningful and life-changing. And I think it's very cool, the timing of all of that, and the fact that that happened. And then so much wonderful stuff has come out of that for you. It's just really an inspiring story.
Thank you. It is. It's even, I could sit here and tell you stories for hours of a couple of things that happened in there and what it led me to, and just very spiritual and growing. It helped me grow as a person, and brought a lot of stuff.
Experience for your life. It sounds like launched you into a whole new path for your life.
Absolutely. Yep. And a new happiness, because I had all these hobbies and stuff. Yeah. It's it's very soul fulfilling for me to do this stuff. That's what it's all about. I stopped enjoying it for a while, and I left, and got myself in a better place, and came back, and it's good stuff.
Well, I love that you described it that way, because I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, having some conversations with friends about the midlife time that I'm sort of getting into now. And I love the idea of really stopping and thinking, well, what's bringing me joy? What am I interested in? What do I want to spend my time on? And I feel like you've captured that. And I love that you've done that, because I feel like people don't always give themselves permission to really let some things go, so they have more space for things that really matter. So I love that that's part of your story.
Yeah, I took some years. It was like 4 years I took, and I left because I was more in the paranormal circle. And there's a lot of drama that goes to that. I don't know if you knew this or have experienced it, but it was. And I just had to step back and see it just wasn't bringing me joy anymore. And I didn't want to do it and it took me, it was really slow coming back though, too. I thought I started doing a little bit, and now it's just like full swing again. And that's awesome. I'm happy. So thanks. I appreciate you saying that.
To have that break and step back. And I do want to let people know how they can get a copy of your book, Haunted Joliet Prison. Where can they find it? Where can they order it?
Amazon, online, amazon.com. Just look up Haunted Joliet or Wendy Moxley Rowe, barnesandnoble.com, or History Press. I think it's History Press, but it might also be Arcadia Press. It's like the same publishing company or something like that. But
and of course, it's under the Haunted America umbrella as well, which has a lot of these style of books, which are so well written. A good friend of ours, Josh Ginsberg, has written one about Orlando that I'm actually reading at the same time. So I'm reading two of these.
They're great. Right. And what I love about History Press is that it's by real people. Like, not real people. I don't want to say that. that. It's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Just average people. They're not scholars or real authors, and that's me. I really don't have much of a formal education, and but I had the material to write this book, and so that's how that happened. I wanted to mention real quick too, there's another haunted series. My photos and my research for Bachelor's Grove Cemetery was included in Haunted Bachelor's Grove in 2000. That's what led me to History Press and writing my book. I worked with the author of that, same thing, Amazon.com. But all my burial research and stuff, it went into that book, and a lot of my photos of the cemetery. So, yeah.
So one of my final questions for you as we kind of wrap this up, is there a cemetery, graveyard, whatever, that you've not been to yet that is still on your bucket list? Like, anywhere
yes,
in the
yes,
world.
yes.
Where would you? Where's your number one?
Number
place
one.
That you'd love to go?
It is. Oh my goodness! It's in Savannah, Georgia, and for some reason, I'm having like a brain bubble, and I cannot remember the name of it. It's Yes, I think so. That one. Yes, I've seen pictures of that. It looks phenomenal, and that's like number one on my bucket list. There's another one though. I was talking to my buddy up in Boston, and it's called Forest Hills. And I just wrote a blog about this real quick. This is a crazy story I just learned about. They built these little houses, this artist did in this cemetery. And each one is from a historical person in the town. And it's modeled after their real houses. And there are these headstone things. But they did it, one of the guys that's buried there, and they modeled his house. They had a flood in Boston. It was a molasses flood. They had this huge 2 million gallon tank of molasses, and it cracked and opened, and it created this 14-foot wall of molasses that killed a bunch of people.
It did.
And I could not believe it. And they said it was, it was horrible. These people were, because it was molasses, they were stuck in it. They couldn't get out of it. And they say to this day that it still smells like molasses when you go to that area of Boston.
Yes,
so I just thought that was
a sticky situation. It was a faulty water tower, essentially, that was not kept up to code. That finally gave way and flooded.
And it gave way. They said it was so bad that people literally would go with buckets. There was a crack in it, and people would go fill their buckets with molasses out of this thing. And it just went one day, and it just, tidal wave of molasses. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there's a whole corporate greed story there for that too.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand why you
want the ways to die. That's so
horrible.
Way to go.
Yeah. Mrs. Butterworth turns bad, kind of a thing. I'm not so horny. Well, Wendy, we're so thrilled that you took the time to talk to us tonight, to talk about your photography. Remember, everybody, you can see these amazing photographs on Tombstone Travels on Instagram and on Facebook. Make sure you check out the blog. Make sure you order your copy of Haunted Joliet Prison. This is really well written, by the way. I know I'm only halfway through, but I've really enjoyed it so far, and I can't wait to read the rest of it. Any final thoughts from you before we go?
Yeah, I just think you're really interesting, and I love that you're sharing this work with everybody. Like, I think I always love meeting somebody who's really into something, really good at something, and putting it out there and sharing it in all the ways you do. Keep doing it, because there is an audience for it. We're proof of that now. Yeah. And I just want to say thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for having me and giving me this platform to share it with other people too.
Oh, it's been really fun. I think a lot of people
enjoy it. Yeah, this has been fun. I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Well, thank you. We're the same kind of people. We're all into this interesting dark attraction kind of stuff, which is fascinating. And speaking of which, hello to Leon, who's watching from the UK. Great to see you, buddy.
Yep.
And thank you again, Wendy, for chatting with us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And
we're here most every Wednesday at 7 Eastern.
Yep.
And do we know our guest for next week?
We do have a guest next week. His name is Gregory.
I put you on the spot.
You did. But he is an author of after-death and near-death experiences. And he is going to share his research and what he has learned through his books.
That sounds really interesting. No Nordic aliens, I'm assuming.
No
But
Nordic aliens.
but
that time. We'll get back to that sometime.
Well, sorry, Wendy. That's
it's a whole other thing.
Totally off on a tangent. But we are really excited about doing this. We have some cool new formats for these Wednesday nights coming up very soon and starting in March. So everybody stay tuned. Sign up for our newsletter so you know what's coming up next. Wendy, you have been really interesting and wonderful. Thank you for being our guest tonight.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.